Songwriter. I don't even know if the rest of the world knows it yet, but you're incredible. I've been preparing for this interview. I'm looking at your new album, El Corazon, and I'm looking at all the other ones, and your songwriting is so good.
Well, thanks. That's what I do. I mean, it's my records have sort of always been, I mean, 100% song-driven. The songs dictate everything, you know, the musical setting that they're put in, and that's first and foremost what I am and what I do.
Like some people say, you know, they're an entertainer. Steve Earl to you is a songwriter.
Yeah, I mean, I am an entertainer, I am a producer, and I am a recording artist. I write prose, but I'm essentially, you know, at my core, a songwriter. I always have been, always will be.
And you've had other people record some of your songs?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, not as much as, I mean, I ostensibly made a living as a staff songwriter in Nashville for a lot of years without getting a lot of cuts. People are a little scared of my material sometimes in Nashville, but I get the odd cut here and there.
Maybe because it's honest?
Well, I think it's because, you know, it's just this sort of thing that develops of like, well, if it's a song I haven't recorded, it's like, well, if it's such a good song, why didn't he record it? And if it's a song I have recorded, they just get a little scared of it. Mm-hmm. It's one of those deals. I don't know. I get cuts. Yeah, most of the people that record my songs now are outside of country music, but occasionally, you know, Travis Tritt recorded "Sometimes She Forgets" a couple of years ago, and which was a financial pleasure. And I don't really actively seek that stuff anymore. You know, people mainly just pick them up off of my records and record them.
Well, what I was reading also is that you have a book of short stories coming out in the fall.
It's actually, it'll probably sometime before the end of the year at this point, mainly because I thought it would be out by now, but I ended up writing El Corazon instead. I went to Ireland basically intending to write prose and wrote songs instead. I don't have that much control over the process, so I can just write what I got in me to write. And so I didn't really intend to release a record this year, but I got to Ireland, and it was songs that were getting written, so we made a record. And but I write something every day. You know, if there's not a melody, you know, I write prose mainly because sometimes there's not a melody lying around, and it's become something I really enjoy doing and something I'll probably always do.
That's what I was going to ask you next question. You're very good. What impressed me is that you write every day. You get up and you write every day. Yeah. Not everybody can do that. There's not always something flowing.
Well, everybody can do it. I mean, yeah, I mean, I am not capable of manufacturing stuff, but there's always something to write about. You know, you may rewrite it later, and you may not be doing your best writing on a given day, but it's better for me. It really started because I went through a period where I didn't write at all for a long time, and you know, just a fear of not, you know, being able to do it again. I've gotten a lot more disciplined about it in the last few years.
You're an avid reader. I was reading. You love reading?
Yeah.
Does that contribute to your writing?
Sure. I mean, you can't, God knows you can't, there's just not enough there. If you were dependent on other songs for inspiration, that'd be a pretty shallow well yeah. to draw from. And I read, you know, Hemingway said you can't write if you don't read. And I read more nonfiction than I do fiction, and it's not that I have anything against fiction. I do read fiction. I'm just I've got a certain amount of time to read, and probably 75 or 80% of what I read is, you know, is history and biographies and travel books and that sort of thing.
That's what impressed me, because I'm an avid reader. So when I get to talk to another reader, you know, every time I have a spare minute.
Yeah, well, reading's great because it doesn't. Books don't need batteries, and they don't. Yeah. You know, they can be pretty good friends.
El Corazon, is that your 9th album?
God, is it? I don't know. I think it's actually my 8th studio album, and I mean, there's a live record in there, and I've been repackaged a few times, having been on a couple of labels, but it's my 8th studio record. I'm pretty prolific. I don't, you know, I make a record. There's never been longer than 22 months between records up until I stopped making records entirely. The Hard Way came out in 90, and then I didn't make a record again, or actually 91, and I didn't make a record again until 1995. And due to my drug habit, I just, it reached a point where it was a full-time job to to get and take drugs. And until I got clean, there wasn't really anything else I could do. Once I did, since then, I've been basically making a record a year. I don't know how long I'll keep making records at that pace, although it seems like it could hold up for a while simply because I don't, I have a lot more time and a lot more energy to devote to what I do now. People don't realize what hard work it is being a dope fiend. It takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of money. So I work a lot.
You have a lot to say, obviously.
Well, I think I do. And it's, sometimes I'm saying the same things over and over again, but usually when I do that, it's because something's important to me.
Well, for me, myself personally, I lost track of you after Copperhead Road because I was listening to your stuff, and then I kind of didn't listen to you anymore till I got this new album. And we had reviewed your album on the show Country Max Bourbon. I've fait la revue de l'album in the fall, and he, my co-host, and he ranted and raved about this album, and I couldn't get my hands on it, and I got it when I came to Calgary. And I've been listening to it nonstop for like 2 days. It's so good. It's eclectic. It's like so, it just touched me. It's so good.
Well, it's a strange record because it's not the record I started out to make. I started out not to make a record at all when I went to Ireland. I started out to finish some short stories so I could publish some sort of collection. Well, that didn't work out, and there were songs being written. And then I decided, well, the next record's going to be a real straight-ahead, two-guitar, bass and drums kind of rock record, and which a couple of the songs are, and they were the songs that already existed, and so I kind of assumed the rest of the record would be like that. What ended up happening was I wrote probably more all over the place than I ever have, and I just called, when I got about halfway through the process, I called Ray Kennedy, who's my production partner and my partner in the studio, and I said, well, you better start, call these people. I gave him a list of people to call because, the Del McCoury Band and the Fairfield Four, and people that we've worked with, that I knew I was going to need because the songs were starting to shape up. And we've developed a way of recording me that sort of glues all the stuff together and makes it a coherent record somehow. And I don't, it amazes me more than it does anybody else that it all works together.
Well, some of the cuts in your album, Telephone Road,
yeah.
Talk about Lafayette, Louisiana. That song is so, you just picture whatever's going on. You're talking about your brother, and you just picture it.
Well,
it's a picturesque kind of song,
It's a song about a period in Houston that doesn't really exist anymore. Telephone Road was sort of, white trash Main Street in Houston, Texas in the early 70s when I first moved there. And Houston was the first place I went when I got out on my own before I went to Nashville. And now things have changed a lot. And so it's sort of, it's a song about a place that doesn't really exist anymore. And so it's kind of written from memory.
You know the rest? Carl Perkins, or what a rockabilly feel, like that tune.
It's kind of strange when we cut that. It was one of the last recordings that I made with Roy Husky Jr., who was the bass player on Train to Come In. And Roy died of cancer last year, about 3 or 4 months after we recorded this stuff. And we were trying to, it's a strange feel because, my drummer's from New Orleans and then Roy's on it, and there's this, he's actually from Shreveport originally, but he lives in New Orleans, and he's a New Orleans drummer. It's a real hybrid feel. There's this real Zydeco thing in it, and the song itself was originally written as a bluegrass song. I mean, that's the way, when I wrote it, I was touring with the Train Band, and I was playing it with them. And it's just sort of, the song started out being, I wrote it in England because I was in England, and I don't get high anymore, and the food sucks there, so I didn't have anything else to do. It's true.
You said that in your bio about the album. True. I thought the food sucks and there's nothing to do and you don't get high anymore.
Those people can't cook. No doubt about it.
You know what? Now I know why. I was trying to figure out why I fell in love with that tune. I sing Cajun Zydeco music, and I write. And when you say it has that Zydeco feel, I'm like, I was listening to it over and over.
Yeah, if you listen to it, it's a Zydeco shuffle. I mean, that's what the drum pattern is.
There's like a little groove that just grabs you, by the heartstrings. Something, I have so much to say to you because I found it so interesting, all your stuff in your life. They were saying, in some stuff I was reading, they compared you to Hank Williams Sr. because of your lyrics and the over-the-top lifestyle.
Yeah, well.
And you, on your new album, you have The Other Side of Town.
The Other Side of Town is like intentionally channeling Hank. I mean, I even wrote it in archaic language. I mean, it's not really, it was definitely, I've listened to a lot of, those are some of my favorite records not just Hank stuff, but Webb Pierce records from that same period, and we discovered recording stuff like there's no drums on it. It's just upright bass, and it's Roy again on bass, and my rhythm guitar and the upright bass become, the drums. They sort of, between the two of them, do what drums do in a modern recording. And we actually went as far as, we recorded it the way we always record, but when we mixed it, I was listening to it, and I had Ray center all the pan pots on the console. And so it's mixed in mono, and it doesn't sound right in stereo. And that's when we came up with the idea of just going ahead and putting the needle drop on it. And it's not just at the front of the record, it's all the way through it, because there's a low end rumble that a turntable makes. And it all of a sudden sounded complete when we did that.
So it's in mono, that's what that sound is.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
at the end, like the needle drop, it's unbelievable.
And it's also, the vocal was recorded through a PB90 RCA microphone that was made in 1933, it's just, we got a lot of old gear, and we usually don't carry it that far. I mean, we do use more modern microphones on some things, although we nearly always use tube mics for vocals. But we use the ribbon mics for a lot. Like recording upright bass, no one's ever come up with a microphone that records upright bass better than these old RCA type ribbon mics. And we use them a lot. We use them to record electric guitars. We use them for a lot of things. And there really haven't been any advances in recording that have anything to do with improving the way records sound since 1963 or 64. At that point, it all became a matter of facilitating being able to overdub or making the process of making records easier. It didn't have anything to do with making things sound better. So a lot of our gear in our studio is old stuff that we sort of we scrounge spare parts for it and pray that it doesn't break and just keep recording until it blows up.
You certainly know your gear, and you're quite the producer. You produced this last album. And you can feel the Steve Earle, like on that album. You feel it throughout the whole album. It was mastered by Hank Williams Jr. at his place.
There's a guy called Hank Williams, a totally different person.
Okay, then I was wrong.
Yeah.
Cut that out. No.
Yeah. And there's a guy named Hank Williams, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of a joke, but he's got what I think is the best mastering lab in Nashville right now, and no relation to either one of those.
But it makes for a good story, the Hank Williams Sr. and stuff.
Yep.
I Still Carry You Around is a very bluegrass tune. Is that true? Your next album is going to be bluegrass?
Yeah, pretty much. The next record will be basically me and the Del McCoury Band and the odd guest, and no drums, and it's about half written, so it's pretty much a lock that's what the next record will be.
Is that because of your Virginian roots? You have a love for that?
It's just bluegrass is the original alternative country music, and those guys have always, they commit to playing music and staying true to it, even though they know it almost guarantees that they'll never make a lot of money. And the bluegrass players and the songwriters in Nashville, when I first got there in the 70s, sort of always hung out together because we were the bohemians in town, and we were the people that were a little left of center. So I've known most of these guys for years, and this is whereas Train to Come In was an acoustic record with some guys in the band having some background in bluegrass. This is a little bit more of a hardcore, bluegrass record as per what Mr. Monroe used to refer to as the bluegrass music, and he had some definite ideas about how it should be played and what instruments should be used, and which I respect to a certain extent, and but then again, it's going to be all new songs, and probably some of those rules will be broken in the process.
You've always been very candid about your personal life. And I think that's interesting about your personal life, your past life. And I respect that because a lot of people try to have a showbiz face and they kind of always hide all the nasty or things they don't want people to know. And I think that's neat. And I think that the public respects that about a person, that, hey, he's human like us.
It works both ways. I mean, I get tired of talking about, stuff that happened in the past because it's in the past.
Yeah.
And so... there's that side of it, but when people ask, there are things that happened to me, and I survived them, and I did it. I didn't do it because I'm cool. I didn't do it because I'm tough. I did it the same way that everybody I know that's ever gotten clean and stayed clean, got clean and stayed clean the same way. And that's how I work a program, and it's you know, so if somebody asks me, I tell them simply because there may be somebody out there that's in the same position that I was, and it means that, you know, there's hope.
So you're real busy nowadays. You're raising your son, your 16-year-old son.
Yeah.
A single parent. I've been a single parent with a 16-year-old daughter, so that's fun.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
And,
Yeah.
and you're a musician and songwriter and on the road, so you're quite busy and your future looks wonderful.
Well, it's, you know, I stay busy because it keeps me out of trouble, and you know, I like to work. I like my job.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And your son is into music also? He's playing guitar in your album?
Yeah, he played on one track. It was really kind of an accident. He just happened to, we cut the track in the afternoon. He had just gotten out of school, and he came by probably to get some money. And, and I said, well, okay, but first get that green guitar over there. And he ended up playing on the track, and he played great. He's done it with us on stage a couple of times. He did it. We played in Nashville a few weeks ago, and he came out and played Here I Am with us. But he's playing, he's writing, and God help him, he's pretty good.
Well, Steve Earl, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. I can't wait to see you tonight live. I've never seen you. And I'll be the first in line to buy all your future albums. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Well, you want to do a little...
That's
You want to do one in English?
I'll do it in English. I'm one of those people that when I go to Paris, it's like, you know, I always end up at...
The food's good there.
Oh, it's great.
I
tell you what I love is getting into the country in France, because then the food's great and you don't have to put up with Parisians.
Geez, we should have said that about the food, the French connection. The food.
Oh, God, I played this festival in Craponne, which is like, you know, it's, well, that's where the festival was. I actually stayed in this little village called Chaumeliche, which is like really tiny, one inn, one restaurant, but the food was incredible. I mean, it was great.
You know what's so cool is you go into this little house that looks like a little tiny dump, and they start serving you stuff. You're there for 3-4 hours.
The cheese would be like, they bring the cheese tray, and it'd be like...
For dessert, the cheese and the fruit?
Yeah, 30 kinds of cheese.
Yeah.
It was incredible in this little bitty place.
I was there a week in November, and last November, and I gained about 5 pounds just in a week. I had been, prior to that, 2 weeks in Montreal, then a week in Paris. I came home. I was like, it was so
Food's good in Montreal, too.